All right, my name is Owen Hotucker. If you'd like to, John Himes of Dynamic Tech Media at School of Mines. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. And we want to start off with just what has your journey been throughout the area of quantum computing, specifically in Colorado, and then why are you invested? What made you invested in quantum computing, and sort of what piqued your interest in the topic where you're like, I really want to look into that?
Sure. So I was introduced to quantum about 10 years ago, where my brother-in-law, Jason Denny, was working at a company, Inflection, then known as Cold Quanta. And he was one of the first business hires among this team of physicists. And he was telling me about it. I was always interested in science and technology, and I was working in technology marketing. And he's like, John, you have to check out my company, like come to my lab. And he showed me around, told me about it, and I was like, this is like the coolest stuff ever. And in my work as a technology writer and marketer, I always wanted to stay at the cutting edge. And it's hard to imagine anything more cutting edge than quantum. And so when I started Dynamic Tech Media, it really actually started with the Colorado Tech Spotlight, which tells the stories of local innovations. And I realized that there were all these quantum companies here in Colorado. And at the time, I was working a lot just purely digitally with people all over the world. And I really wanted to get involved in the local community and do things that were very interesting. So I started reaching out to all these companies. And then Courtney Ralston-Deuce from Atom Computing was the first person to say yes. And she said, come on over to Atom Computing, let's sit down, we'll tell you our story and see what you can do. You're not charging us anything, so let's at least try it out. And they loved it and said, why don't you go talk to these other people in quantum? And just one person led to another person, led to another story. To the point where I realized that this is like the perfect place to be for the skills that I have. And I just realized that there's so much momentum being built in this area, and that there's a real problem that they have with communications, especially for the non-technical audience. And as quantum becomes more mature, becomes more mainstream, the way that these companies talk about their technology needs to make sense for people who don't have a PhD in physics. And so that's the thing that I'm best at. And so I felt like, it makes sense for me in Colorado, as I'm starting my business, to really focus on this area. And, I just saw it as a great opportunity to, grow my business, to connect with the community, to learn a lot, and to be really interested in it.
Zach Yerushalmi, on January 15th, 2025, mentioned how Colorado is the best ecosystem for quantum by every measure. What do you think those measures are, and would you agree with that assessment compared to maybe Chicago, as an example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a no-brainer, honestly, especially that we're way ahead of Chicago. I think that the metrics there's many. There's the amount of quantum companies, there's the amount of people that are working in the field, there's the PhDs, there's the Nobel Prizes, right? And the investment that's coming into Colorado. The state support, the venture capital. I think all of these things are coming together to create this perfect storm. It's almost like a center of gravity, like a black hole. Like everything is just being pulled into it to the point where like this is the place to be. And especially when you compare Colorado to a place like Chicago, like this is where hardware is built. And the quantum right now especially is hardware. Like change is happening at a hardware level. And so the fact that we have the nanophotonics and the integrated circuits, the lasers like at Vescent, the computing companies like Atom Computing and Inflection, the sensing companies like Mesa Quantum and LongPath, like all of these people are all building physical devices and figuring out ways to take something from individual lab bench thing to mass manufacturing at scale. Like that is the Colorado story of quantum technology.
I really loved how you put this sentence. Reality is there, whether or not we are able to swallow it whole and come up with tidy words to describe it regarding quantum computing, and how tangential quantum computing can be. how do you personally get a grasp on the technology, not just for yourself, but when you're writing and working with Dynamic Tech Media on this topic? And maybe how did you, when you first came upon it, what was your sort of, how do I attack this in terms of an understanding perspective?
Yeah. So a lot of reading, right? That's
Yeah.
that's kind of step one is read, talk, review, repeat, and just learn as much as I could. Um, I was fortunate that I had exposure to quantum from my brother-in-law, and as well as in my education, I got to read some papers by Schrodinger and some other people who were some of the original people who came up with quantum mechanics. And so I was just always very interested in it conceptually, and I felt like there's something very profound here that always intrigued me, and I just wanted to learn as much as I could. And there's still a lot that I don't understand about quantum mechanics, about quantum computers, about engineering in general, but I always try and think about who my audience is, what they need to know, what they care about, and how can I put things in a way that they can relate to, understand, and really get value from.
And I'm really interested because we've spoken to a lot of people, obviously, about quantum computing, and there are massive expectations. With this, just put on this technology already, and the furtherance of its development. Do you think those? Because we've spoken to researchers where maybe they think the expectations are a little bit too much, and maybe they're even detrimental to the development of quantum. Because if you put these massive expectations and then it doesn't lead out to where exactly they thought it would.
Bubble bursts.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's a whole issue of, well, this isn't what I paid for, sort of thing. I'm curious, would you, I guess, go into those expectations, and would you qualify them as more detrimental to the industry or positive overall?
I think it cuts both ways, honestly. I think that the fact that there is a lot of excitement about it brings top talent and investments that the industry needs. As it's really hard, and we're going to need a lot of smart people and a lot of money in order to build a useful quantum computer. But at the same time, quantum in general as a word has kind of a loaded connotation, right? Like you think about quantum supplements or quantum dish detergent. Like it has nothing to do with actual quantum technology, and is literally just used as a hype word. And so this is something that I certainly am considering and trying to work through in the way that I market these quantum technologies. As far as whether that's harmful, it certainly can be. It can get out of hand. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm so focused on the practical applications and the near-term solutions like quantum sensors. Because the hype for quantum computing, nobody knows whether it's going to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 20. But quantum sensors, they're here right now, and they have practical applications that end users are getting value from. And so remembering that and focusing on how do we use that in order to create like a bridge to larger scale applications and even more useful quantum technology. And it's like proving out the concepts and then building from there. And I think that there's a lot of fear that some of this stuff is just smoke and mirrors, especially when you work on something for so long, and it's like the hardest challenge that you could possibly imagine. What are you going to do? And I think there probably is some amount of that in the industry. But overall, what I see, especially in Colorado, the people I'm talking to, is serious engineering work that is being done every day in order to create devices that is going to be beneficial to people and help us do our jobs, help us live better lives.
It sort of feels like, are we trying to make the problem solver before we know the problems themselves in terms of the algorithms and stuff like that? Because obviously the algorithms are there, like the algorithms have been there, Meanwhile, the technology is sort of trying to catch up. So like it's always difficult, we're solving these massively complex problems, and no one ever says like, oh, but it's this specific problem, or you know what I mean? It's sort of hard to put a box around that problem, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So it's, you know, like, are we building the calculator before we know what the numbers are, or is it sort of vice versa on that?
I think there's elements of both. I think this is why you often hear about things like drug discovery and logistics optimization when people talk about quantum computing applications, is because the theory says that quantum computing is really good at this certain class of problems that has to do with combinatorial optimization, which basically means like a huge problem space with lots of different variables and permutations, where it would take even the world's largest supercomputer, you know, millions of years or lifetimes to go through. That said, you know, I think that we only understand a small fraction of the true potential here, right? Like when Turing invented the computer, it was to break the Enigma code during World War II. Like, he didn't imagine Zoom calls, right? And so, you know, it's really hard to say, like, 100 years from now, what people are going to be using a quantum computer for. I really think that it's only in our wildest dreams. But I think in the near term, it's going to be alongside, you know, the huge NVIDIA chips in the data center, right? High performance computing, machine learning, scientific computing, you know, these kind of really big, hard problems that supercomputers struggle with are the first thing that quantum is going to help us with. And it seems unlikely that we're going to carry around quantum computers in our pocket. But, you know, 100 years ago, they didn't think that we were going to go carry around smartphones either. So hard to say, really.
Yeah.